law, it will assume that for a population, the frequency of alleles and also genotype will going to remain the same in the absence of any evolutionary influences. For example, if we'll take in this problem, they have given the lizard population with different phenotypes. Okay, so first thing we need to add up all the phenotypes like G small g and homozygous recessive phenotypes. Okay, if you will do all these things, for example, a total of 1600 lizards are present with the homozygous dominant genotype, heterozygous, homozygous recessive genotype. First, we need to calculate the frequency of homozygous dominant genotype. For that, first you have to take the uh, population which is having this dominant phenotype, that is 1024 divided by the total population. Here you are getting the frequency as 0.64. Now in the same way you need to calculate the frequency of homozygous recessive genotype. Here recessive genotype is expressed by how many lizards? Okay, it is 64. So 64 divided by 1600 will be equal to 0.04. Okay, now the heterozygous population also they have given, that is 512. So in order to calculate the frequency of heterozygous genotype, you need to divide 512 divided by 1600. Okay, once you are done, now you got the frequency of homozygous, heterozygous and homozygous recessive genotypes. Okay, all these phenotypes, like all these frequencies, they will ask you by giving the population who are present in that particular proportions. Now using this data you can calculate the frequency of dominant allele. Here capital G is represented by dominant allele. For that, first you need to take 0.64. In heterozygous population, half of the, like if you will take heterozygous population, they will be carrying both dominant allele and recessive allele. That is the reason from 0.3 to 0.16 will have dominant allele, 0.16 will have recessive allele. That is the reason why you need to add up 0.16 to 0.64 to get the frequency of dominant allele. So the frequency of dominant allele is 0.8. Now in the same way you can calculate the frequency of recessive allele. In the recessive allele already you got, it is 0.04. For 0.04 plus 0.16 will be equal to 0.2. So the frequency of dominant allele is 0.8. The frequency of recessive allele is 0.2. See, this is the same methodology. If they have given the homozygous dominant, heterozygous, homozygous recessive population, you need to add up all the populations. Using this data, you can easily calculate the frequency of homozygous dominant, heterozygous, homozygous recessive genotypes. Along with that, you can also calculate the frequency of dominant allele and the frequency of the recessive allele. Okay, this is the way usually all these problems will be solved. So this is about the first one. Now see, even if they will give you the frequency of recessive allele, as you know p plus q is equal to 1. Using the frequency of recessive allele, easily you can calculate the frequency of dominant allele by subtracting recessive frequency from 1. Now take the second question. Here also they have given the total individual. In the total individuals, they just mentioned that how many are showing dominant phenotype and how many are showing recessive phenotype. But here they did not tell you uh, the proportion of homozygous dominant, heterozygous, homozygous recessive individual. So here heterozygous also will appear with dominant phenotype. So you cannot differentiate who is homozygous dominant genotype and who is heterozygous genotype. Okay. In order to calculate that, first we will go with the frequency of homozygous recessive genotype. Okay, now 108 divided by 1200, you will get 0.09. Okay, so 0.09 is the frequency of homozygous recessive genotype. Using this frequency, you can calculate the frequency of recessive allele. Okay, the frequency of recessive allele is Q is equal to root of 0.09. Now, root of 0.09 will be equal to zero point 0.3. Once you know the frequency of the recessive alleles, easily you can calculate the frequency of dominant allele. As I told you, P plus Q is equal to 1. Already you know Q. Q is zero point 0.3. So P is equal to 1 minus zero point 0.3 is equal to 0.7. So 0.7 is the frequency of the dominant allele. Okay, once if you know the frequency of dominant allele, frequency of the recessive allele, you can easily calculate the frequency of homozygous dominant genotype simply by multiplying zero point 0.7 with zero point 0.7. It is 0.49. And in the same way, if you want to calculate the frequency of homozygous recessive genotype, you need to multiply zero point 0.3 with zero point 0.3. For heterozygous, you know it is 2 PQ, 2 into zero point 0.3 into zero point 0.7. Okay, so given the information, you can easily calculate the genotypic frequencies and allele frequencies from the given data. This is the same methodology you can use for all the Hardy-Weinberg law related questions. Okay. Now they have asked you whether the population is in Hardy-Weinberg like Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. To know whether the population is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium or not, you need to sum up all the frequency of homozygous dominant genotype, frequency of homozygous recessive genotype, frequency of heterozygous genotype. If you'll get 1, if it is equal to 1, then you can say that the population is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Okay, so the allele frequencies will not going to change unless there is some disturbance from outside. Otherwise, these frequencies will going to be maintained at a constant rate throughout the generations. See, if you take this kind of problem here, both homozygous dominant genotype and heterozygous genotype, if you take their phenotype, both will look alike. Means you cannot differentiate whether they are carrying two dominant alleles or one dominant allele and one recessive allele. Because dominant allele alone will be expressed masking the expression of the recessive allele. Okay, that is the reason to solve this kind of problem, we will take the help of frequency of a homozygous recessive genotype. Okay, because homozygous recessive genotype means they will be carrying both the recessive alleles. So their phenotype will have a recessive phenotypes. And here you will not have any confusion because truly they will have two recessive alleles in them. Okay, so see now when you add up 0.49 plus 0.09 plus 0.42, you have got 1. So this population is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So if they will ask you this type of question like calculate the frequencies, you can easily use this simple method to do that. Even you can know whether the population is in equilibrium or